Josh, how's it going today?
Ryan, it's been weeks since we've had time to do one of these things. I'm so excited to get a chance to chat with you. I even brought a coffee just for good old time's sake, just to give you a little virtual cheers.
I have an old mug. It's
That's
no,
I wouldn't point that any further, my friend. That looked like some stale coffee in the bottom there.
no, this is from today. This is from today. It's still liquid. It's all good. I'm not that disgusting. It's okay. But I'm excited for today. We're talking about the AI predictions for 2025 in the third-party recruitment industry. I know I've prepared three. I think you've prepared three as well.
We got three on the go. Yep.
Already. I'm excited for this. I'm not sure if we'll be sad next year about doing this or happy about it. We'll see how good we are at predicting. But maybe to kick it off, I can go first and give my first prediction if that sounds good.
Yeah, do you think?
Awesome. So I think one of the biggest things we've heard a lot about and seen kind of like pop up in the startup community is the concept of AI doing interviews and calls for recruiters. So rather than a human being involved in that actual candidate meeting, it's an AI that's taking care of that. We're seeing this a lot more on the corporate recruiting side, so less in third party. My big prediction is that has kind of came onto the scene, but it will really come onto the scene in 2025. Most firms will experiment with it in some shape or form, and it will actually negatively impact them. The reason why I think it's going to negatively impact them is because the best candidates and the best recruiters know about this, about the best candidates aren't just applying for a job, they're evaluating job opportunities. And when I have the chance to ask my questions, I feel like I'm being treated with a level of respect and a level of effort with putting some time in my calendar and having a conversation with me about the role that you're trying to bring me onto versus sending me a link that this AI is going to talk to me and like ask me about my ideal next role and things like that. It's not going to leave a good taste in the best candidate's mouth. Now, candidates that are really hungry for a job, maybe they don't have a lot of experience, maybe some of these more competitive roles, you can get away with it. It will still work, it will save time. And that's why I don't think it's going away. I think it's going to be a part of the future, but I think it's going to be misused a lot to a recruiting firms or even a corporate recruiter's peril. So that's my first prediction. What are your
I
thoughts?
could not agree with you more, though. I think it's something at surface level which seems like it's going to make a lot of sense. Like, hey, can I get twice the output of interviews or screening calls that I could do without scaling my team? That makes sense from a math perspective, but I really feel you're going to have the pullback to your point around that candidate experience. And I think the biggest trend that we're going to see in that from the third party recruiting space specifically is as you go down market to more temp roles. So if you're a temp staffing firm, I could see something like that making a lot of sense because your role tends to be more transactional in nature. I could see maybe some of the staffing space look to use it again, depending on the type of role they're looking to fill for. It's just the industries that there's are going to be in. As we start to get up in staffing, more technical roles or in your executive recruiting, I think especially in those early stage calls, to your point, that's where your candidates are starting to evaluate your company on that first role. And we do know that that experience level, that interaction, that first interview sets a tone for the rest of their process. I think there's going to be experimentation that we're going to realize it's actually pulling away from that candidate experience. And I really do think that's the value driver that third party recruiting can give because I can see that being a bigger trend in the corporate space and a lot of recruiters, unfortunately, getting misplaced or displaced because a lot of those efficiencies that these companies are looking to make.
Yeah, I think also like a form can handle that. It's like we're trying to use AI to make these like really cool things, but it's like let's focus on utility and
Uh,
the difference of utility of using AI for something versus not. A type form, a jot form works to make sure the basic level expectations you're aligned with. You don't need some AI to have a call in the first setting. Use AI for like assessments or like later funnel of like more testing at scale. That's something that could be useful, or even reference checks, things like that. but the candidate experience is so important. And so
Mhm.
that's my first prediction. Would love to hear what's your prediction?
My first prediction, and this is a pretty nice one here too, and I think we're going to see a big evolution of the role of a recruiter over 2025. And if I get into more context of what I actually mean, we obviously know one of the biggest advantages that you gain using something like AI is how it can start to automate repetitive tasks. So I think the biggest trend that we're going to see across 2025 as a positive trend is that it's actually going to start to change the role of a recruiter from more of an in the weeds role to more of a strategic role. And so we get a move from being the quarterback to being the quarterback coach in a lot of these situations too. And just thinking more strategically around our hiring profile, how we're trying to go about this too, not just trying to see how can we fill the roles day to day perspective. How can we start to think about this from more of a 10,000-foot view because we have that assistant automating a lot of this work for us too. And mine's a lot more of a safe prediction than your first one, I will say, but I am very bullish that this will be a major prediction that's going to help drastically increase the efficiency of especially the third-party recruiting space.
Yeah, so what would be some of the things that you think like they won't be doing from like a tactical day-to-day perspective?
Honestly, all the admin work that nobody likes doing anyways. So that's things like taking notes on calls, biased because of what we do. That's things like updating their ATS. That's going to be things like putting together your any write-ups that you're looking to make. That's even things like creating and sending that final email draft over to the hiring team. Our role as a recruiter is going to be what is the ideal profile of that candidate that we're looking to fill based on what that client has actually told us they want to see. How can we actually spend our time in going through resources that AI is starting to put in front of us around here are great profiles to find exactly what that's going to look like and really refining that task. I think it's going to be more seeing more of a strategic point of view because we're going to have so much better data around what's working, what's not because of how AI actually operates as a whole.
I think a really good example to your point is rather than you spending your time as a recruiter and being a core function of typing up write-ups and submittals of candidates and sending it off to clients and putting all your pretty branding on it, that's going to shift away from, you're not going to do that anymore. That's going to be completely automated. However, what you're going to be spending your time on is what's the best things and most important things to be putting in those write-ups strategically that's going to drive the highest acceptance rate from those hiring managers that you're specifically working with, or what's the best writing style, all those things that you're almost coaching the AI to do for you. So yeah, you're becoming a manager of your recruitment process rather than an individual recruiter. I love
Yeah.
that. That makes a ton of sense. It kind of goes into my second prediction really well. It's kind of overlapping, but like kind of a segue as well. My next prediction is recruiting admin work will be a thing of the past. So specifically, headcount because of that for recruiting firms will not go drastically up, maybe even slightly down, where if someone leaves a recruiting firm, rather than backfilling that person, they're going to leverage the efficiency gains of AI. I don't think it's going to be a drastic decrease because of how human the recruitment process is, but I don't think it's going to be an increase of headcount in the recruiting firm realm. I think you're going to be therefore more profitable as a recruiting firm owner and have better margins in that sake. So you can grow your revenue by 30% without actually having to grow your headcount by 30%. Instead, you add maybe 5% more cost on from an AI perspective, and then you just take that margin and then be able to reinvest in your business in whatever way you deem fit. So that's what I really believe is headcount is going to stay the same, stay flat for recruiting firms, and they're going to be able to do more with less.
Because as a recruiting firm, that's your biggest COGS margin right there, right? It's like making sure you have people in seat that can actually sustain the roles you're trying to fill. If we're able to increase the efficiency without adding to that fixed cost, man, does that make this recruiting business really start to sing because we know it is a tighter margin industry in general. So that starts to get us into points where we really start to get exciting about how we can accelerate the growth and development across these firms. So that's a really exciting thing you're mentioning.
Yeah, like a 3-person boutique firm can almost change from having the revenue of a 3-person boutique firm and the cost structure of a 3-person boutique firm to still having that same cost structure, but operating like they're 3 boutique firms all in one, right? So I think it's going to be super exciting. What's your next prediction for us?
My prediction number two here is that we're going to see a drastic advance in terms of analytics and insights that recruiters are going to start to use because of how much AI can help automate this for them. And so, some of the biggest things that I can see, because we know a lot of the firms that we're speaking with today are incredibly data driven, right? They're looking at market research, they're understanding talent gaps, they're understanding things like what are performance predictions that we can start to use based on hiring profiles that we're looking at. I think AI is going to help automate a lot of this too. And that whole idea of how can we work smarter, not just harder, as we're looking at a lot of these opportunities too. And so I'm very bullish that this is going to help with a lot of like support decision making perspectives, especially as firms are looking to stay competitive. Because if we can stay up to date on what's happening across development teams within AI specific tech companies versus manufacturing industry engineers that they're looking to fill, and make sure we have all those insights top of mind as technology continues to exponentially compound, that's only going to help make sure that your recruiters can stay with that competitive advantage, especially in such a competitive recruiting space.
Yeah, I think AI will definitely help provide analytics, but also I think analytics will change to the word insight. It will
Yeah.
provide more insight for your internal operations, what's going well compared to other firms, and comparatively within your firm from each colleague to one colleague. And then also externally, how you can provide insights to your clients based on the calls you're having, what you're learning from the market, and being able to make it easier to actually showcase that to your clients and just add more value as a firm.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Especially in very technical niche roles. I think this could be a really big thing.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. My last and third prediction is more around which industries I think recruiting firms are really going to thrive in, specifically if they serve these industries and help find talent for them. So the three industries that I think are really going to make a big impact is the labor recruitment. So construction, all the plumbing, all of these things are not going anywhere. And if anything, they're going to be needed more and more as companies build gigantic data centers and really invest in this type of technology and the infrastructure around it and the energy around it. So I think if you've positioned yourself to specialize and recruit for those specific sectors, we're seeing here that it's going to be a really big movement in 2025. The next role is engineering, right? A lot of people are saying, oh, engineers are going to be automated away with these tools that are doing a big part of it. What's really going to happen, it's going to make people that were technically literate, and then it's going to make the people that are technically literate 100 times more effective. Because all the things that recruitment firms are automating away using AI so they can focus on what they're truly good at, exactly the same thing is going to happen with developers and engineering. So that's obviously going to be a huge one. The more specialized you get into the AI field, the better there as well. But that is going to start to become competitive if you focus on AI, because that's where everybody's going. So I think engineering across the board will be a strong year. And then executive roles. More people are going to need to level up their strategic thinking and executive caliber on their teams, because there's going to be less of those middle roles. Those middle roles are going to be eaten away by AI, for better or for worse. It's just what's going to happen. So focusing your time on really establishing a niche in an industry that AI won't replace those jobs and instead make those jobs even more important, I think is going to be a winning strategy for your recruitment firm.
Yeah, and I know this is conversations that you and I have had, Ryan, even just offline, where we're even seeing, as you think about the evolution of the workforce. If you go back across North America 100 years ago, agriculture and farming was more than 80% of what we did on a day-to-day jobs perspective.
Yeah.
That's 100 years ago. That's not that far. That's really 2 generations. And if we look at just how the workforce has changed and evolved over that time frame, we would be naive to think that we're not going to see an even bigger revolution over the next 100 years because of how AI and technology is growing. Now, while that might displace some jobs, it's going to open up opportunities for others. And to your point, it gives massive opportunities for strategic roles, because you might not need a team of 10 salespeople to get the same output like we spoke about earlier. You might be able to get to that point where 3 or 4 with a leadership position overseeing that kind of oversight too. I think we're going to start seeing more specialization of roles because AI can automate the general admin work. But I do think it's going to help create a ton more roles that we don't even know is possible. And I think one of the most interesting points that I always think about when I was in school 15 years ago trying to think of what I want to do for a career, I could not have told you I'd work at an AI company. I didn't even know what AI was. And now I'm working at an AI company, for example. And I think we're just going to continue to see those types of trends and evolutions as we continue to go. And I think the biggest recommendation I have for everyone is that change is scary. The more you can lean into change and find ways to level up and advance your skills, it helps you ride that wave because the world is going in this direction. It just like when the internet came out 20 years ago, and now look at all the advantages we have because of those institutions that came into play.
I completely agree. What's your last and final
Prediction number 3 here is that AI is going to revolutionize how we're thinking about upskilling and reskilling. And I think a big part of this too is especially as we're thinking about coaching or even just leveling up our skills as recruiters in general. AI is going to give a really interesting way how we can definitely identify skill gaps, reskilling opportunities too, and even just ways that we can increase our prioritization of candidates as we're thinking about things too. And so it's not only how we can ask better questions, frame roles more specifically, maybe get better insight around how we're actually finding those great candidates, but it's going to help us upskill and reskill as recruiters. So I know at the start you were even mentioning maybe like an AI recruiter in general. Maybe instead of an AI recruiter, that's an AI recruiting coach where we can actually work at tonality, positioning, how we're framing opportunities too. Really interesting things to think about how we can retool some of those ideas that we're actually looking today, because we know that as a capitalist society, we're only building products and businesses that people are actually looking to put their dollars behind. If we don't want to be replaced as recruiters, it's not going to happen if nobody buys a product that replaces recruiters, for example. And so if we're thinking about how AI can help us retool and reskill and just up our games to increase those efficiencies, that's a pretty phenomenal way that we can make sure that we are staying in powers as humans in those positions and using AI to actually increase our productivity.
Yeah. Well, one couple examples I think are already happening is I've talked to some recruiting firms that are creating an AI for their candidates, their top candidates, that they can do mock interviews for the actual hiring manager interview. And it's
Mhm.
helping increase that success rate, specifically for candidates that are transitioning from one sector to another or one job to another, that they might not know the general lingo or like the way that these conversations go or the questions that they should anticipate to ask. Other examples are specifically recruiting firms that are positioning themselves as an educational program. Hey, we need more engineers at X with X very niche coding language that nobody uses yet. So we need to hire all these people. We're willing to pay money and like really invest in here, but there's just not the talent pool. We've even
Yeah.
seen in specific examples for like training BDRs out of school where they learn about these practices and then are able to actually place them into job opportunities. So I think it's gonna be a crazy year, Josh. I know we both have a call we have to run to, so we're gonna cut it short. But feel free to yell at us in the comments if you disagree with any of our predictions.
Talk to you, everyone.